just for the record, I do have a key to our house. Okay. Coming for you.
It's in the glue. It's in the later.
We didn't take any off the top, just what they are here in front. How they have the sticks. Everywhere, but down there where everybody complains about not being able to
See
see.
when they go out. Yeah. Yeah, like the one for right there, they, just that one on the end right here. That will get off.
On the end where
She come out of that street right by the depot.
it can still be coming from the bottom. I told her, I said, "Take them at least 12 inches from the ground. 12 inches from the ground to get enough here, still be here. But that's harder to do, I think. I think I'm gonna ask him. He's the only one down there. I had something to cut my hair.
They said it was more than not paid for. They still let them do the game, doesn't it? But why would they be doing evaluation? Related party. Market doesn't. What's that?
Yeah, from the back.
Good evening.
Carbon, character is just a man. Carbon is just a
Whatever, anyway, 35%, I know you want to get out of it, that's a big question. So, basis, just what they pay.
I'd like to welcome everyone to the June City Council meeting. council members, you have received the minutes of the May 7th, 2013 city council meeting. And the opportunity to review them prior to this meeting. Could I have a motion to approve minutes?
A motion that we approve the minutes, the May 7th minutes.
Motion by Ms. Stewart, second by Ms. Bowman. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes that were distributed? All in favor of approval signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. The minutes are approved. This evening, I'd like to welcome a special guest, the partner with Baird and Company and the lead person on the city's 2012 audit, Mr. Butch Whitten. Butch, welcome. Happy to have you with us again.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure to come up, and the first thing I'd like to do is thank y'all for selecting us to do the audit. It's always interesting to come to Crawfordville, and it reminds me of when I grew up. I grew up in Harlem, which is a lot like Crawfordville is, so it's always fun to come up here. You've got two reports in front of you. The first one is that I'd like to go through is what we call a SAS 115 report, but it's a report to those that's in charge of governance. And it's the one with the window on it that's got a bunch of writing on it. Doesn't have too much of a date. And what that does, it explains, or it reports to you how the audit went. And in summary, the audit went very well. As a matter of fact, I think this is about as good a year as we've had as far as getting the audit done, and especially the financial statements. We're getting better at it, so things went very well there. This report also sets forth certain responsibilities, and one of the responsibilities that I wanted to point out is they're your financial statements, and you're responsible for the financial statements. We're responsible for issuing an opinion. And if you look, when we get back to the financial statements, there are 3 letters in there that are our letters, and the rest of it is basically your information. What we do is we come in and test that information so that we can give you an opinion on it. And there's a bunch of titles there and all, but I think one thing you need to understand is materiality. And materiality can vary, but basically what it is we won't make an adjustment or wouldn't make an adjustment if we don't feel it would change the person that's reading the financial statements' opinion or mind about it. For instance, some of your accruals may be off, a few $1,000s, but we probably wouldn't adjust that because it wouldn't make any difference. And we take a look at materiality from 2 different standpoints. One, the size of the adjustment or size of the difference. And the other is actually what relates to it. For instance, if somebody were, if we saw some indication that some money might be missing, a small amount might apply, where a larger amount might apply someplace else. Also listed there are your significant accounting policies. There were no unusual transactions. Alternative treatments there, that's something that there are different ways to handle different items. For instance, depreciation can be straight line or accelerated, and it changes the amount of depreciation. You've been consistent in the way it's been handled for a number of years, or at least all the years that we've been doing it. So that was as if everything expected. Management didn't discuss any changes with that or try to manipulate that in any way that we could see. Management makes estimates and judgments, primarily with the lives of property and collectability of receivables. There are disclosures in the financial statement, and usually that's the footnotes. There were no uncorrected misstatements, and we did have some misstatements that they're audit adjustments, and they're in the back over here, and that's not unusual. We've had them every year, and it's not unusual for all of our engagements. Pretty much we see that in nearly every engagement. Management also makes a representation to us. There were no outside other auditors that we were, accountants that we were aware of. And then in the back are the correspondence that we have with the city, which would be an engagement letter which sets forth in terms of the engagement, a rep letter which documents your responses to a lot of our inquiries, and then the adjusting entries. And also in there, I think, well, I know what the engagement letter is, our peer review, we have to go through an audit too. So we feel a little bit, we understand your displeasure sometimes with us being here. We're an inconvenience and we know that, and everybody's really kind to us when you're here. The next thing I'd like to go through is the financial statements. And if you go to page 1, it's on our letterhead. And if you look at that, it's presented a little bit different than it has been in the past. They changed the way they recommended us presenting it, so it sets out our responsibilities, management responsibilities. But the whole thing comes back to the opinion. And you got the clean opinion, which you want. You got an unqualified opinion, and that's the one that you want. And that's on top of page 2. It's, in our opinion, the financial statements are fairly stated. There are other items there that are referred to, which is the MD&A, which Mayor Milner prepares, and it's included in here. Our responsibility is limited in that. We primarily read it and compare it to the financial statements. And this year, there was an additional item that's in there that last paragraph's going to refer to. Y'all got enough single audit or enough federal money to require you to have a single audit. If you get $500,000 in federal money, you're required to have a single audit. And there's basically what that means is that you have to test the expenditures for the federal monies. And you got enough there, and that's a good thing. So I'll go over that letter with you as well, or I can tell you right now, there were no findings, there were no compliance issues, and there were no internal control issues that were material weaknesses. So that's what you want. That's what you got. The page 6 is the MD&A that I mentioned. Mayor Milner prepares. Page 9. We're going to get to the crux of everything there. This is a statement of net assets, and it's broken down into government and businesses. And if you look, the bottom line there is net assets, and that tells you the financial position or really how good you're doing. On the governmental side, your general fund and your other special revenue funds, you've got a $788,000 net assets. That means your assets minus your liabilities come to $788,000. Then on the next page, that's for your general fund, and I need to bring out the business as well. That is your water and sewer system, and you've got nearly $3 million in net assets there. So you're in a pretty good financial position for your financial statement. On page 10, once again, these are your entity-wide statements, and if you'll look at it, you got your government activities, business type activities. And I think the important thing there is your water and sewer revenues were $1 million, and your general fund or assets revenues were $228,000, and that's primarily property tax income. If you look on page 14, the information gets presented in a different manner. And it gets presented in a different manner because there are two ways to present government funds. One is modified accrual and the other is full accrual. And the statements that we just went over are full accrual statements, and they include all your property and equipment, and they also include all your liability, your long-term liabilities. These statements, starting on page 14, do not include all of your property and equipment, which would be your building here, and it also doesn't include any of your debt for your general fund. Your business type activities are a little different. They're full accrual, so they do include your property and your long-term debt. But from a fund basis, your governmental activities, you have $742,000 in a net position, and $3.5 million on your business type activities. And I would point out that you're very fortunate. You're in a very good, very strong financial position at this time. That's what you want. The next page is sort of a convoluted way to show an income statement, but it finally does get down to net income, and it gets down to net income for both your water and sewer, which is $633,000, and your governmental funds, which had a loss of about $46,000. So probably what you need to do is take a look at how you're gonna, your millage rates, so you can get your budgets in line, and I think y'all do take a pretty good look at that. The governmental funds, the general fund is on page 16, and your fund balance there is $188,000. There's a reconciliation between GAAP and between the original statement and this one. And then there's a statement of revenue and expenses for your general fund, and it comes back to the $188,000 again, where you had the income. On page 20, this is a comparison to your budget. And page 21 is your water and sewer system. And as you can see, you have total assets of $4.5 million, and you have a net position of $3.5 million. Pretty strong position. So you got an adequate amount of assets, an adequate amount, and very little debt. Primarily, your debt is related to borrowings to improve your water system. I think you had a big EPA made you do some improvements a couple of years ago, and you had to borrow some money for that, and you're still in a good position with it. On page, find the right page here. On page 24, the footnotes start, and then what this is, it tells all of your accounting policies, and it also gives you a little bit more detailed look at a lot of your line items like cash and your debt. It breaks down each one of your debt items and tells you how much you have to pay and when they mature. And so I always tell everybody, if you sort of want to get a good night nap tonight, get sleep a little early, you can start reading those footnotes, because by the time you get to number 2, you're going to be dozing off. But, if you know what you're looking for, you can get a lot of information there. I think there are 2 key ones, and that's your cash footnote and your liability or debt footnote. If you look on page 40, now we get to 2 letters that we do. And for it to be a government audit, that's our first letter, and it's a report on internal control and compliance. And to qualify as a government audit, we have to test revenue and expenses. We can't, we've actually got to go in and test certain transactions. And what we do is we pull a sample and test them, and you were in compliance in all respects. And I think if you'll look on page 40 there were 2 findings that we have, and we refer to those in a minute, and I'll show you where they are, and it basically explains them. One of them's adjusting entries, which we have every year, and we're required to write that up, so it's not a big deal. None of those findings were material weaknesses, which are the serious ones, so in good shape there. No compliance issues, everything was in compliance. And on page 42, this is a report on internal compliance as it relates to the government funds, the funds that you get for federal awards, and we're also required to test those. And we pull a sample and test it. And, in this case, we basically looked at everything in there because of the way it's set up. It was just easier to look at everything. It's a construction type project, and it's very easy to test, and everything worked out really well in that respect. We also have to mention those findings that we had before. If you'll look on page 44, and this is the reason you had to have the third letter, and that's a listing of the federal monies that you got. You got $438,000 from the Department of Housing and Urban Development, and you got $317,000 from the EPA. There's a little footnote disclosure thing there. And then if you look on page 46, it's a schedule of findings and question costs. And it tells which program we tested, which was 14228, and tells the threshold $300,000. It gives a summary of the audit, and then it lists the findings. And like I said, I think they were pretty minor. It's the two that we have every year is separation of duties, and you just don't have a big enough staff to really do that. I think management has implemented very good procedures to overcome or mitigate that risk. And the other one, of course, is the audit adjustments, which we have quite common on, and there really weren't very many of those. So I think everything did real good. I think you should be proud of the work that you've done. You've been good stewards to the taxpayer. Any questions? And I would point out again, those findings that we highlight there are very minor findings. That's really, I don't think you're going to, Mr. Milton was going to have to write a corrective action plan, but it's no big deal. I think you're in good shape there. One thing I'd like to point out, if any of you have any questions later on, just give me a call. If I need to come up, I will. I will do everything we can to answer your questions. Okay?
Butch, thank you very much.
Thank you again, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for selecting us. Hopefully we can work together next year. Thank you.
Next on the agenda is public requests. Moving on, mayor's report. Council, we have a potential problem with well number 1. It's been consuming as much power as usual, but the output on the pumps has gone down. Eddie Jackson has recommended, and we're going to have his former employee will come over, and they will pull the pipe and the pump out of the well. They last did this during Lois Richards' administration, and at the time they found there was a leak in the pipe between the pump and the surface, and the part of the water was being pumped out through the hole in the pipe rather than coming on up and going into the water supply. So they will again pull it up and see if it's anything wrong with the pipe, and also check the pump and see if there's anything that is wrong with the pump. In the meantime, with the recent rains we've had, well number 3 is able to produce a good flow of water, and we've got it online, so we have no concern about any shortage of water. It's just a matter of we've got a potential problem and we're going to have to fix it. Moving on to financial reports. First item is the balance sheet for the general fund. This indicates the funds that we have on deposit. Again, point out that the last 2 items, T-SPLOS and the LMIG funds, are both funds that must be spent on road improvements. The LMIG funds have some rather specific limitations as to what part of road improvements they may be spent on, whereas T-SPLOS is pretty much as long as you're building or rebuilding roads, you can spend it there. Flipping over to the general fund revenue and expense budget, the first sheet is the consolidated report of all the revenues and all the expenses that we've had through 4 months. You can see that the income is underrunning by about $4,500. Most of that is the fact that we cannot issue traffic citations because of the police department being denied radio communications. So they cannot check the vehicles as is required to do when they stop. The expenses, personnel expenses are underrunning. The purchases have overrun. Purchase for and contracted services. The supplies have underrun, and other costs have underrun. So we've got about a $5,000 overrun on the expenses. I'll show you where that is when we get to the next page. Not any big deal because this is 4 months of operation, and we tried to predict month by month how expenses would occur, and you just cannot successfully do that with all types of expenses. The next page is the general government expenses. again, personnel expenses here have underrun. The purchase contracted services have overrun by about $14,000. And that basically was the cost of our annual audit. They got the work done sooner, we got billed earlier. There's really nothing to be concerned about. It's money that was in the budget, it's just, it wasn't in the budget this early in the year. The judicial expense, we've had none, so we underran the total estimated budget for that operation. Public safety, the personnel expenses have underrun, purchase and contracted services have underrun, supplies have underrun. The overall cost of the operation is down, and it's good because we're not getting any fine money to support it. The public works, the purchased and contracted services have overrun slightly. This is because we did a lot of road repairs during the first couple of months of the year. The supplies have underrun. And the parks and recreational services, we're right on budget. Next page is the balance sheet for the enterprise operation. You can see the funds that we have on hand. We have ample funds to continue to operate the business. Moving on to the revenue and expense. First one is for the water and sewer operation. The total income has been $158 above budget. Expenses overall have been greater than was budgeted. That's because at the time we adopted the budget, we thought all of our capital outlay for the well house was going to be paid in the last fiscal year. Unfortunately, these $4,900 in cost have rolled over into this year. And when we adopt the budget amendment, we will have to fund that. But it's an expense that we expected to make last year that wasn't made. Next is the solid waste. And our revenues have underrun our budget $246. Our total expenses have overrun by $279. So we're $525 greater expenditures and lack of revenue than we had budgeted. Are there any questions about any of the financial statements? old business, we have no new business. Is there anything that any council member would like to bring up? Do I hear a motion?
A motion that we adjourn.
Is there a second?
No second.
This meeting is adjourned.
Hey. I have, excuse me, well, I came down here to report that up on, Martin Luther King Drive is two bad potholes up in the road. One of them right there in my driveway. And it needs to be fixed, cause it's real bad. And when I come out my driveway, my car falls down in that hole. So I come to report that it needs to be,
What's the exact address?
my 381, I'm at my house now, 381 Martin Luther King Drive.
Okay. And what's the other one?
It's on down the street from me, but it's two.
Whose house is it in?
It's, Glory Milk. But that up there at my house is real bad. It's the hole, it's gonna sink on down, it's gonna mess up some pipes and gas line or something, cause it's going on down the ground.
Go check that out.
Huh?
We will check them out.
All right, thank you. I'll wait on you, boo.
Oh, yeah, welcome back.
I know you missed it.
You can't get it back.
Put wig on.
Josephine, do you know, is she talking about in the pavement or is it?
In the pavement,
It is in the street. Okay.
I ain't got no.
Nothing, no tension. All right, I'm gone, y'all.
All right. The next street light up there by Crawfordville. It's the
No, we gonna get out tomorrow.
Where they join together right there.
I'm only gonna be out.
The street light's still out.
Okay, she put a yellow ribbon on it. That's what we do.
Oh.
And we're going to Clark Street.
Mm-hmm.
I know it. Whose house is it?
Right across from Charlie Barker.
But he used his address. They
That'd
always
be
want
his
street
driveway.
address.
It's right at his driveway.
Every time you call power cut, if you tell them it's some intersection, well, this is street address.
Send a letter telling them they got to clean it up.
What, Charlie?
Send a letter to the Globe and tell them they got to clean that stuff up.
Oh, who tore that down?
Right.
Just knocked it over.
Who does it belong to?
It actually on the, they rented that property from the term.
Yeah, from George Turner family.
He explained to me they had to clean it up for it, but they still supposed to pay him rent for that clean it up. He told me they had to clean it up, they knocked it down, they doing it. So far.
This look awful.
No, they tore it down themselves.
They had, some guys, I think, she got one. Might be someone, a friend or something.
Don't look like they want to get that bottom and set it still.
Well, they, one time, you don't think it looked wrong, they should've got Eddie, they tore it down, Eddie would've tore it down and hauled off.
And moved it up. He do some good work. You hear me?
It had.
Eddie Harris.
Uh-huh. Yes, he is.
It's good.
When it hit it, everything leave with it.
He don't leave nothing.
And if you skip a day or two, you coming right back.
But he ain't no spring chicken to do all that stuff he do neither. I'm just saying.
Guess he got good help.
He's older than I am, I
But
think.
He on up in age.
when they get in there,
And he's good.
He may
And I
give us
think
a day or
it's
two.
not to me, anybody ever wanna see.
Yeah, he is really
How you
good.
clean it up and send a letter from them, tell them somebody got to clean it up. This look awful.
They just knocked it over like.
Look like somebody should have burned it. If they burned it, they would have burned everything.
Melt on the outside and then.
Can it be burned? There's not any, stuff there? Get the fire department to burn it, give them a training. as a council member.